Welcome back. Today I'm going to be bringing you my tight end ranking for the 2025 NFL Draft. I have only looked at the 6 main prospects for tight end because the draft is creeping up on us and I want to make sure I get through offensive line and running back. But definitely some interesting differences in my opinion on this group versus the consensus, so I won't waste any more time before getting to my number 6, Mason Taylor out of LSU. Taylor could be a useful receiving tight end because he does have a little bit of snap to his routes and seems to be consistent bringing the ball in, but he doesn't jump off the screen as a receiver enough for me to overcome his mediocre blocking ability. He's 6'5", 251 pounds, but he doesn't look to be that well built. He could probably do with converting a bit of that mass into muscle and just seems to lack a bit of juice when it comes to the blocking aspect of his game. And I have a similar evaluation on my number 5, Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon. Again, not the most ferocious blocker, but I think he has a bit more chance of finding a specialized role in the NFL as a receiving tight end. Ferguson is more explosive than Taylor and has a bit more juice to his routes. At number 4, I have Tyler Warren out of Penn State, and I have a second round evaluation on him, so at one of the less valuable positions, the ranking probably seems a bit harsher than my actual opinion on him as a prospect. But to be clear, I do think he's completely overrated. This is one of those prospects that for analysts, it's really easy to have a first round grade on and to have as the number 1 in the position, because you can easily sell him to people when you're writing the evaluation. On paper, he had great production with 1,230 receiving yards. He's a good blocker. He even ran the ball for Penn State here and there and actually threw the ball 6 times last season. So you'll see evaluations like he's the do-it-all tight end, the heart and soul of an offense that can turn your franchise around. But what you'll probably see on these same evaluations is they'll sneakily slide in somewhere that he's not very elusive or that he's not going to gain much separation, which is bizarre to me that you can just throw that in like it's nothing. Here's my evaluation. He's a good blocker and a useful receiver. A lot of his receiving production is him being schemed into space or him making contested catches, which even for a tight end is not nearly as translatable to the NFL as the elusiveness of the route running. A quarterback doesn't want a tight end who can catch it with a guy all over him 40% of the time. He wants someone who is open 80% of the time. That's what having a reliable tight end is all about. And I think Tyler Warren is fine as a receiver, but he's not elusive enough to ever be considered the most important part of an NFL offense, which is crazy for someone who is being projected in the top 10. Number 3, I have Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. He's 241 pounds, but at 6'3", that's a much stockier and well-built frame than Mason Taylor, for example. He had 1,555 receiving yards, which is easily the most in this group, but obviously against weaker competition. I know his blocking ability gets questioned, but he was barely used as a blocker, so I wonder if that's more of an assumption than an assessment, because he's got the physicality to be a presence in this area and the mobility to be moved around and provide value on run plays. So I feel pretty comfortable with his blocking, certainly in comparison to a few others in this group, including a guy that I've got ahead of him. And I think this could make him a really well-rounded tight end because as a receiver, he's got what it takes to be a very effective option. He's a powerful and dynamic receiver who can stretch the field with a bit of speed, but more importantly for a tight end, his shiftiness and toughness bringing the ball in will make him the consistent target that the quarterback is looking for in the short to intermediate regions. Just like Tyler Warren, he can break tackles, but he also brings the speed to add plenty of yards after the catch. At number 2, I have Colston Loveland out of Michigan. I think I'm pretty much exactly where the consensus is on this guy. I do have him as a first rounder. We know at 6'6", 248 pounds, the narrow frame isn't going to make him the most effective blocker, although I think maybe the concerns are a little overblown as he is pretty willing and pretty technically sound in this area. This said, he's a receiving tight end and could be a serious weapon. Unlike Tyler Warren, contested catches probably aren't going to be his thing, but he's pretty tough, having played through a dislocated shoulder, which he is now getting surgery on. The length that Loveland has means the quarterback has the option to put it where only his man can get it. I won't go overboard and say Loveland is a freakish athlete, I don't think it's quite that, but he certainly has the speed and fluidity to be an 1,000-yard receiver if he goes to the right team. There are a few teams this year that don't need much but could use a tight end to add another dynamic to their offense. The Broncos, Colts, Jets, and Rams may all be interested in what Loveland could bring. But I don't hesitate in saying that no tight end in this group has the upside of my number one, Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. First things first, he tore his ACL in 2022. It then lingered well into 2023, meaning he's had one fully healthy season. He then added to this narrative by missing the combine with a knee injury he picked up at the Senior Bowl, but he did go on to explain that it was just a bit of bruising. So I don't love being higher on someone based on my ability to play doctor, but I can't help but feel he's just being completely disregarded and somewhat unfairly. This is one injury that happened to ruin 2 seasons for him, and this is by far the best film I saw in this class. Similar to Harold Fanning Jr., he gets questioned as a blocker, but I would hope the analysis goes further than the fact that he was just asked to do it less often by his offense than most of these other prospects. All I saw was a really well-built physical blocker with mobility to be moved around on run plays. I saw absolutely no issue with his blocking, and as a receiver, he's incredibly dynamic. I think part of the misconception is that people look at it as he only had 500 receiving yards with Cam Ward as his quarterback, but without spending 5 minutes on my Cam Ward evaluation, I think Ward has plenty of upside, but my main concern was the lack of anticipation and unwillingness to throw to open reads. There's nobody who paid for that more than his tight end. There were many occasions where I saw Arroyo wide open and Cam Ward not pulling the trigger. Arroyo has the speed, the suddenness, the fluidity, and the consistency bringing the ball in to be genuinely one of the best tight ends in the NFL. So I'm not saying there's no risk involved, but it's not enough risk for me to pass on a guy who, if he can stay healthy, can completely change the dynamic of an offense. Overall, I was really impressed by this group. I didn't get through enough prospects to know much about depth, but some really interesting players. It was a fun watch and plenty of upside with the top 3 I spoke about especially, and then you have Tyler Warren, who actually probably has the highest floor of any of these prospects. It'll be offensive linemen next, and then we finish off with the running backs. I might be able to sneak a mock draft in before the draft, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching as always. If you do enjoy the content, please consider liking and subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you next time.